Harlequin Desire, Cowgirls Don't Cry, Red Dirt Royalty, Silver James. We're at page 99. Let's continue on. Well, honey, if you don't tell us about it, there won't be a way, 'cause we won't be able to help you figure out how to make it work. Boots sipped from his coffee mug. Cass stared from one to another. A cattle drive. Nadine and Boots exchanged a cryptic look, and she sighed. See, I told you it was ridiculous. There's no way we could do a cattle drive from the ranch to the stockyards. Why not? Her jaw dropped. Because, Uncle Boots, half of Oklahoma City stands between the Crazy M and the stockyards, not to mention a couple of major interstates. You know, that just might work. The man in the booth behind her tapped her shoulder. You need some permits and stuff, but you can move them along. Section line roads wouldn't have to touch many busy streets at all. Were they not listening? She still wanted to bang her head on the table. This was too crazy to even contemplate. Anybody got a map? Another man dragged a chair over and planted his beefy body at the end of the table. We could draw out the route right now. No, just stop. It's just Boots and me, and we can't handle 500 head. And it's, what, at least 20 miles to the stockyards? We can't push cattle more than 5, maybe 10 miles a day tops. There'd be no place to stop at night, no place to water them. I thank you, all of you, but it just won't work. Her audience grumbled but turned away, returning to their own business. The idea was simply too preposterous to even consider. She drank her coffee, completely unaware it held neither cream nor sugar. There had to be another way. She just needed to figure out what it was. Maybe she'd call Chance. He disappeared after her outburst, but he called and left her voicemails on her cell phone since then, asking how she was doing. He was a cowboy. And smart. Maybe had some ideas that would help. Late that afternoon, she clicked off the phone rather than leave yet another voicemail message for him. Boots was down at the barn, working with a colt. Buddy lay in a puddle of sunshine streaming through a window. He woofed and his paws twitched as he chased something in his dreams. She dropped beside him on the floor and buried her fingers in his thick fur. Am I crazy, Buddy? I mean, like totally insane. There's no way we can drive those cattle to the stockyards. The logistics alone are... I can't even wrap my brain around what would be involved. No, I can't do this. There's got to be another way. I'll go to the bank tomorrow and park myself outside the president's office until he meets with me. She nodded as if to punctuate her resolve. He'll have to talk to me, have to listen to me, and I'll work something out. Bending, she brushed her cheek across the top of the dog's head. I have no choice, Buddy. The dog whined and licked her chin. I'm glad somebody still loves me. Chance flashed his legal assistant a smile. Thanks for staying late. I stay late every night. Say what you mean. She waggled her index fingers at him, the other hand on her hip. Why, thank you, Heidi, for taking all the heat from my family for not making me talk to them. She was right, but he sure hated to admit it. Even so, her attitude made him grin. You are worth your weight in gold, Heidi. I'm getting in writing so I can hold it over your head come bonus time. She leaned on his desk and closed the folder he'd been staring at for the past hour. Shut it down, boss. Go home. Or go out. Go do something besides sit here and brood. He kicked back in his desk chair and fiddled with the expensive pen in his hand. You're on her side. She laughed, long and hard. Of course I'm on her side. Your father's an absolute alpha hotel. Her Heidi's husband was retired military, and she tended to reduce terms used in vernacular to their military equivalent. Yeah, but what else is new? She stared at him, both hands on her hips. Now, really? You have to ask this question? She rolled her eyes when he remained silent. You, boss, you're what's new. The way you're looking at this situation, the way you're reacting. This girl's gotten to you. Why her after all the other stuff your old man has done, I don't know, but you've changed." He shook his head. "No, no, I haven't, Heidi. If I had, I wouldn't be sitting here with these papers on my desk." Heidi snorted. "Yes, you have. The old Chance would have filed the paperwork the first day and served the girl at her daddy's funeral. The old Chance would not sit here stewing over what an alpha hotel his father is, and the old Chance would not care one whit what he was following in his old man's footsteps. But here you are." She shook her head and started to wag her finger one more time, but resisted. "I'm going home. Turn out the lights when you leave, boss." In the silence following her departure, Chance swiveled his chair to stare out the window behind his desk. The barren building, all 40 stories of it, dominated the skyline. From his view on the 36th floor, the southwestern expanses of the Metroplex unfolded before him. He picked out the historic farmers market building and beyond it the stockyard city. The phone rang on his desk, but he ignored it. It was still ringing when his cell phone started. He didn't have to check his caller ID. At least one brother would be calling, probably two, or worse, Cassie's number would stare back at him. He'd done what they wanted, distanced himself from her. He listened to her messages for a while at least, craving some tiny connection to her. Then he had to delete them without listening. Her voice tore his heart to shreds, and it shook every ounce of his self-discipline to keep from driving to Crazy M to claim her. Why did he have to choose between family and the wonderful woman who'd captured his heart? But he knew the answer. He looked in the mirror. Take away everything else, he was a baron, through and through. Damn it! And why did it have to come to a woman? Being a baron guaranteed the lady in question would get hurt. Cass wore the same austere suit she'd wore to her dad's funeral. The sleeves bunched a little, and she realized all the physical labor she'd done lately had changed her body, slimmed some of the curves and packed on the muscle that wasn't a bad thing. An office door opened, and she sat straighter, but the woman who emerged ignored her, walking straight to the front of the bank. Cass settled back against the uncomfortable chair and wondered again why she was doing this. She hated the ranch. The life didn't suit her at all. She wanted to sleep late on the weekends, go out to dinner, work in an office where her friends gossiped about the latest celebrity breakup and makeups, the hot new television show, the ugly dresses on the red carpet. Except she didn't care about those things. Not really. Another door opened and she leaned forward, peering down the long hallway. A man stepped and headed away from her. She glanced at the wall clock above the receptionist's head. 11 o'clock. 2 hours she waited so far. The loan officer had already passed her up by the chain to the bank president, who was stalling her. Surely he would leave for lunch. If she couldn't get him before, she'd grab him on his way out. At 12:15, a pizza delivery guy showed up with 8 boxes. Pepperoni, onions, tomato sauce, baked cheese, the scents blended together. Her stomach growled. Offices emptied, the occupants all rushing down the hall to what she figured was the conference room. A security guard arrived and sat at the receptionist's desk. He glowered at her from time to time. At 4 she was thirsty, hungry, in desperate need of the restroom, but unwilling to give up. The man had to go home sometime. The phone on the desk buzzed and the girl picked it up. "Yes, sir." "No, sir. Hasn't moved. Sitting here all day." "Yes, sir." The receptionist covered up the speaker at the end of the receiver. "Mr. Leonard can't see you today. You might as well go home." "I'll stay in case he has a cancellation in his schedule, and I'll just be back tomorrow. Tell him I'm not going away." The girl sighed dramatically, swiveled her chair so the back was turned, and whispered into the phone. A door at the very far end of the hall opened. "Mr. Leonard can give you 10 minutes, but that's all." Cash jumped to her feet and all but jogged down the hall. Leonard sat behind his desk looking distinctly uncomfortable. He rolled his sleeves down, but they looked rumpled, and he made no pretense at straightening his tie. His florid face glistened with a sheen of sweat despite the cold air venting from the overworked air conditioner. I can't help you, he began without preamble. How do you know? I haven't even asked for anything. I know what you want, Miss Morgan. Your father owes this bank $250,000, give or take some interest. Are you prepared to pay that amount today? I can't. I need an extension. The matter has been referred to legal counsel for collection and foreclosure on the assets, and is no longer my responsibility. She'd been ready to launch her argument when the import of his statement sank in. Wait, what? Foreclosure? But the papers. Ms. Morgan, loans payments were deferred in balloon payments at the end of the loan period. If you are prepared to pay the full amount due owing, the bank will halt the collection proceedings. If you aren't, then the matter is out of my hands. You can't just do things like this. I not only can, young lady, but it's done. This bank is not in the habit of buying cattle, and that is essentially what we would have to do since your father defaulted on the loan. He leaned back, rocked, his fingers laced across his ample belly. I work for the bank. The loan is in default. Filing suit was financially sound action for the institution. The matter is out of my hands. But, she said, stunned and speechless, your time is up. You need to leave, Miss Morgan, or I will call security and have you removed. But, he leaned forward and tapped a button on his phone. Call security to my office. Cass glared at the man, but rose from the chair. My daddy trusted you. She spun on her heel and marched out with her head held high, brushing by the startled guard. He shadowed her all the way to the parking lot and waited until she climbed into Boots' beat-up truck, started it, and drove out of the parking lot. So much for the friendliness of small-town banks, she groused. At the next stoplight, she dug her cell phone out of her purse and dialed. The insistent ring echoed from the speaker. Come on, Chance, pick up, please. You have reached my voicemail. You know what to do. Yeah, she knew what to do. Why the hell was she depending on the jerk anyway? He sweet-talked, wined and dined her, jumped her in bed, and then he no longer had time for her. What? Well, that's just fine. She didn't need him. She didn't need anybody. A horn honked and startled her out of her thoughts. She focused on driving until she could get to a little place next to the highway. It wasn't the four corners, but the scent of the barbecue wafting through the truck's open window made her drool and her stomach gnaw on itself. Inside, the wooden planked walls looked grimy and smoke-stained, but the food still smelled heavenly. Antiques and old pictures littered every surface. She ordered ribs, fried, heaped her plate with onions, dill pickle chips, and jalapenos, and sat down at a little table in the corner. She bit into the first rib and almost moaned. Plastic squeeze bottles held different sauces and ketchup. Experimenting with the various flavors, she found a mix she liked, dragged the rib through the puddle of sauce on her plate, and devoured it. As she finished off the last homemade apple cobbler and ice cream, Cass realized that this would be the last time she splurged. She had less than $1,000 in her checking account. The ranch account had enough to pay the bill at the electric co-op. The propane company had told her that they would wait, and she almost had a full tank at the house anyway. No job, no income. The loan was due, and she had no clue how to pay it. A headache formed between her eyes, and she rubbed her forehead. Why did she even care? She hated the ranch, didn't she? Hated Oklahoma, but not a certain man who lived here. She could just walk away, not look back, leave Boots and Buddy, and she nibbed at that thought. She did not want to think about Chance, about leaving him. Her life was in Chicago, not here, wasn't it? She didn't want to deal with the tangle of emotions Chance conjured up. Why hadn't he returned her calls? People gave up and walked away all the time, but she wasn't a quitter. Her daddy would be spitting in his grave, or that little box holding his ashes, if he could hear her thoughts. I don't raise quitters, honey. You wipe those tears, get back in that saddle and ride. You're a Morgan. Show 'em what you're made of. Oh, Daddy, she murmured. I miss you. What am I going to do? Something clattered back in the kitchen, and she jerked her head at the sound, broken glass, and spilled food. Yeah, that was a terrific sign from heaven. She glanced out the window, but a photo beneath it caught her attention, faded with age. It showed a group of cowboys on horseback, a herd of cattle milled behind the riders. Leaning closer, she peered at the legend on the photo, 1944. Calvin Barron and Hands Deliver herd to Oklahoma City National Stockyards. That was quite a day. Cass jumped and jerked her head around. An old black man in a stained apron chuckled. The war on the inn was the gasoline was being rationed. Old Mr. Barron, he had him a prime herd of cows and no way to get 'em to market. The government wanted them heifers to feed the army, but them old boys had to figure out a way to get 'em to the stockyards, to put 'em in on the train. Dizzy as ideas whirled in her head, Cass felt as if she was on the verge of discovering something important. Then the name clicked. Wait. Old Mr. Barron? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Cal was the current Mr. Barron's daddy. Mr. Cal sure was anxious to get those cows to the railhead. Story goes they were all sitting around drinking, and those boys decided they'd have an old-fashioned trail drive, so they did. Took 'em nigh or on 2 weeks, but we pushed 'em that herd from Mr. Barron's ranch up the North Cascadian River and right down into the stockyards. The newspaper came out, took pictures. Some radio guy from the back east came out to interview folks. Cass glanced at him. Wait, you said we. You rode with them? She leaned closer to picture, studying it. He tapped the back corner, squinted at the grainy photo. She could just make out a chuck wagon in the background. A man with dark skin stood beside it. A little boy waved from the top wagon seat. My pop was chuck wagon cook, and I got flat tag along. That was quite an adventure for a kid like me. She smiled and resisted the urge to kiss his cheek. Thank you. The crinkles smoothed from his face as an expression turned curious. For what? For your excellent barbecue, for coming out here to talk to me, for giving me the faith that maybe I can do what needs to be done. I gotta go. She dashed out to the old truck, climbed in, and pulled out her phone. Cass stared at it, gulping in long breaths as she attempted to quell her excitement. Daddy, we might just be able to pull this off with a lot of help. She'd give Chance one more chance. She chuckled at the irony, but was barely able to breathe around that anticipation. When she got his voicemail, she didn't care. Her enthusiasm bubbled over as she left a garbled message, not even aware when it clicked off automatically. Chapter 11. Chance's finger curled into his fist as he stared at his phone. He resisted the urge to answer, but had to listen to this voicemail, had to hear her voice. The message hurt. She barbled with excitement, the words rushing like a stream tumbling over rocks. Saw the banker, finally. Sorry son of a gun. He said that the bank's foreclosing, Chance, but it doesn't matter. I can get the cattle to the stockyards. I know I can. You won't believe what happened. You know Cyrus Barron? Jeez, that man has more money than Midas. Anyway, I found out something tonight. You won't believe this. His father had a cattle drive in the 40s during the war. I can't. The phone cut off. He couldn't breathe. His chest felt like a boa constrictor had wrapped around him, squeezing all the air out. For a minute, he thought she'd found out about his father. When she continued babbling and her excitement level ratcheted up a notch, he tried to listen, but the pounding blood in his ears muted any sound. He hit the replay button and listened again, prepared this time. Cattle drive. During the war, what the hell was she talking about? And more important, what relevance did it have now? He grabbed his phone and hit a speed dial number. Oh, so now you decide to talk to me. Shut up, Cord. She knows the bank is foreclosing. Does she know why? I don't think so. You don't think so? I don't know, Cord, and I really don't care. She called really excited, and the way she said the old man's name, I don't think she knows. But I need some information. About what? About some cockamamie idea she got from somewhere. Do you know anything about a Barron cattle drive? Dude, seriously, the old man's pushing cows? He heard the clacking of a computer keyboard. No, not the old man. Granddad Cal in the 40s during the war. Huh? Color me impressed. There's a big file on it in the Oklahoma Chronicle morgue. Hang on a second, and I'll forward it to you. To make a long story short, Granddad Cal had a crap load of cows to sell, and because of gas rationing, he decided to herd them from the ranch to the stockyards. The thing got a lot of attention. According to the file, it was even featured in a newsreel at the movies. The Last Cowboy, that sort of thing. Bottom line, he got the herd to market and made a killing. Army paid top dollar, drove those steers straight into boxcars and shipped them off to Chicago for slaughter. Why? What's this got to do with the Morgan situation? Chance stared out the window, wondering the same thing. I don't know yet. I'll keep you posted. Nice to have you back on board, bro. Now go get that paperwork finished. The old man wants the notice of foreclosure served pronto. His brother's words echoed in his head. Nice to have you back on board. But was he? He needed to see Cassidy, find out what bare-brained stunt she was planning, and then he'd talk her out of it. He'd make a few calls, get her another job in Chicago. His heart hammered at the thought. Was that what he wanted? It would be the simplest solution. She'd go back to Chicago. Their relationship, if it could be called that, would be over. She would no longer be a burr under his saddle, and she'd never know that his family, that he, had betrayed her. There was only one problem with that plan. He didn't want her to go. He wanted her to stay. And he wanted her to care about him like he cared about her. There. He admitted it. He cared about Cassidy Morgan. He didn't want to, but he did. No matter how many calls he ignored, how far away from her he stayed, his heart betrayed him. He was a coward, despite the fact he loved her. Admitting it to himself should make him feel better, but it didn't. He felt like the biggest bastard on the planet. She deserved a better man, and a man worthy of her. Damn it all to hell. How did my life get so complicated? Staring at the open folder on his desk, he sighed. Family was everything. Blood was thicker than water. All the cliches that his father had hammered into his sons as they grew up in his shadow came back to haunt him. He wanted to do the right thing, but what was it? Boots stumbled out of the room and headed straight for the coffee pot. Nosy Cash watched him. He walked back to the table and peered curiously at the maps. You look a little peaked this morning, Uncle Boots. Bad night? He muttered something under his breath, and she thought she caught the words honky-tonk, dancing, and that fool woman. She bit her lip to hide a smile. Yeah, I gotcha. None of my business. I suggest we institute a don't ask, don't tell policy around here when it comes to our social lives. He growled and sipped his coffee. Then he tapped a finger on the map. You planning a trip? Cass pushed back from the table, snugged her own mug, and took a sip. She grimaced but swallowed the cold coffee. She headed to the sink to dump the contents and pour out a fresh cup. Sorta. She returned to the table, sat and gestured for Boots to join her. We need to talk. No luck with the banker, I take it. None. That bank is foreclosing unless I pay off the loan on or before the due date. He stared at her a full minute, his expression never changing before he asked, You gonna explain the maps? She inhaled and rushed on. For the cattle drive, it's been done before. Granted, it was almost 70 years ago, but Calvin Barron, she would have missed his expression if she hadn't been so intent on watching him. What? Nothing. Go on. She knit her brows, puzzling through his reaction, but continually doggedly, I'll need permits. I plan on going to the commissioners of the Canadian and Oklahoma counties today to find out, unless you need the truck. She batted her eyes at him. You know, to go to Four Corners or something. He muttered under his breath, and she had to choke back a laugh as he blushed beneath his tan. Take the damn truck. I have to fence to ride. He pushed it back from the table, the chair legs scraping against the scarred linoleum. Cass paused to throw her arms around the old man's neck as he sat in his recliner. This is going to work, Uncle Boots. I just know it. The only damper on her enthusiasm was the fact Chance still hadn't called her. She alternated between concern and anger. If he'd blown her off, he could have been man enough to say so instead of keeping her dangling. But she was enough of a worrywart to wonder if something bad had happened to him. Maybe Chance will help us out too. I hope so, baby girl. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like, for your sake. Cassie kissed the top of his head, wondering at his words. Chance would call, she argued with herself, ending with the final insistent word as she muttered, he will. The next afternoon, Cass rode toward the barn, Buddy trotting beside her horse. Her sleeve was torn and a few bloodstains spotted the frayed fabric. She stretched a strand of barbed wire too taut, and it had wrapped around her arm when it snapped. She'd have to make a trip to the clinic to get a tetanus shot. Her last booster was long out of date. Hot, sweaty, and physically worn out, she wasn't looking forward to trekking into town. As she neared the metal structure, something moved inside and Buddy took off at a run. His excited barking reached in that she nudged Red into a trot. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized the man who stepped into the sunlight. Chance. She'd all but given up on him. He hadn't returned her calls. Her traitorous heart galloped at the sight of him. A stupid grin spread across her face, and she laughed like a giddy girl on her first date. He shaded his eyes, raised his hand in a rather tentative way. She resisted the urge to wave madly back at him as she reined Red to walk and then stopped the big horse several yards away. After dismounting, she did her best to ignore her emotions and the man creating havoc with her pulse rate. Gee, fancy meeting you here. She was so proud of herself. Just a hint of sarcasm and no breathy sigh. We got to stop there because the phone's about ready to give up. So, we're going to come back to page 113. Don't go anywhere. We're going to upload this right now, and I'll see you soon.